Welcome back, you guys. I'm Lisa with Lisa Cape and Quilts, and today we are going to learn how to make a faux fabric border on a t-shirt quilt. Stay tuned. Okay everyone, as you can see, we've been really busy since our first video for this series where we featured this block here. And it is really just appliquing the whole garment onto your quilt block. So if you're interested and you haven't seen this video, I'm going to post a link to that video in the description box below so you can check that out. Today we are going to feature the faux border on a very special quilt block in this quilt. So the materials you're going to need would be a marking pencil. You'll need some Heatnbond light. I really like this because it does not add a lot of stiffness to your quilt. You do, though, with the Heatnbond light, need to do an applique stitch around the piece that you're using this with, okay? You'll need your fabric that you're going to use as your border. You'll need a rotary cutter and a ruler, and of course, the materials you're going to use for your quilt. And you're going to want to go ahead and cut your t-shirt, stabilize and cut your t-shirt to the size that you're going to use in your quilt. Are you ready to get started? Let's see how we do this. Alright, we are at the table now, and we have already applied the Heatnbond product to the back side of our border fabric. I cut myself some workable strips the same length as our t-shirt quilt block. And the next thing we want to do is we want to design the layout or the look of this fabric border. I went ahead and went with a scalloped edge on this particular block. However, you could do any kind of shape that you wanted to, and this technique would work with all of them. You could do triangle shapes, you could do little square shapes, you could do a wavy border. Really, the design possibilities are endless with this. For this particular block, we went ahead and we decided with the scalloped edge. The next thing I wanted to decide was how wide do I want my border to be. And after looking at the logo and the size of the quilt block, I decided a 2-inch border around this quilt block would look really nice. So what I did, you'll notice that this strip is wider than 2 inches. That gives me some working room here. I went ahead and measured over 1.5 inches and gave myself a registration mark right down this strip. The next thing I did was, figuring that we're going to have a 2-inch border when we're done, I measured over from each side 2 inches and I marked my line because I know that area there, I'm not going to want to continue my design into that. It's all going to be hidden anyway when you put your border together on your t-shirt. So from that 2-inch mark to the end, we just left that straight. And you will also cut that straight as well. The next thing I did is I decided on my shape, and this 2.5-inch circle gave me a really nice scallop shape for the amount of space that I had between my two 2-inch marks. And that gave me equal sized circles all the way down, making sure that your pattern is uniform throughout these 2 marks. One good thing about having the paper back is that you can mark on this and you can figure out if your shape is going to work before you actually cutting out your piece. One thing you want to avoid is, let's say you're coming down and all of these are nice, pretty half circles, and then let's say it ended here, and you come over and you have sort of a half circle right before this 2-inch mark. That would really throw off the look of your design. And so it's a good idea to go ahead and sort of measure out or draw out your design, and just to make sure that it works before you're actually cutting anything out. Once you've actually traced all of your lines on, the next thing you'll want to do is to cut this out. And when you're cutting it out, you want to make sure that you stay true to your design line, because this is the raw edge applique onto your t-shirt block. And so there will be no edges to turn under. Everything is going to be stitched down once we have adhered this to our quilt block. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these strips out and then take them over to the iron, and we will get everything started over there. Okay, you guys, we are at the iron. We already have our iron preheated. You want to make sure that the steam setting is not on. Go ahead and read the directions for the Heatnbond light and how to apply that. And one thing to keep in mind when you're using this on t-shirt material is if your t-shirt has any kind of logo that is heat sensitive, go ahead and cover that with a scrap piece of material so that you do not singe your logo when you're applying your fabric borders. Alright, we're going to get started, and you will see I still have the paper backing on my border. I usually keep that on while I'm working with my pieces. I like to use the back as a tool. You can mark where the pieces go, which piece needs to go on first and second, so on. And so I keep the paper backing on my pieces until I'm ready to actually go ahead and apply them. You can see I've already done 3 of the fabric borders, and so you can kind of see a preview of what it's going to look like. And I went ahead and did that just to save us some time. When you're ready to use your piece, go ahead and take off your paper backing. And at this point you can play and position your piece before applying any heat so that you know exactly where you want it. Personally, I like to start at one side and just start adhering that and lining up your straight edge to the edge of your quilt, keeping in mind that's all going to go into your seam allowance. The Heatnbond light does not take a long time to adhere. And really it's just as simple as that. And now you can see our fabric borders are on. Now if you were using a fusible adhesive on the back of your borders that is stable enough that you do not have to stitch it, you would be done. However, because we're using the Heatnbond light products, we are going to take this to the machine now and stitch all of the raw edge along our scalloped edge to complete our block. You can see we are in the process of stitching our fabric border down. I like to use a zigzag stitch to do all of my raw edge applique work, and it really helps to keep the fabric border from fraying down the road when you're using this quilt or when you launder the quilt, and just helps to keep this this border permanent. You can see there's a lot of starting and stopping, readjusting the fabric. But you just slow and easily go through and stitch all of your raw edges down. I used a black thread so that it just blends right in and you don't even see the stitching. You could use a contrasting thread. really all up into what kind of look you're going for. Now you'll see where we've had 4 different pieces come together, you will come to the corners. Some will go underneath of your next piece and some will go over top. One thing to always keep in mind is any raw edge that is exposed within your block needs to be stitched. So I've come to this next piece, and instead of just pivoting and starting to go back down, we're going to do a back stitch right here. That secures your stitches, and now we're going to remove this from the machine and start up here because we have this raw edge right through here before our scallop begins, and we want to make sure to secure that and make sure that nothing ever comes loose down the road. Now I'm going to go ahead and give that just a couple back stitches. It is going to go into our seam allowance, but while we are messing with this quilt and putting it together, I want to make sure that nothing comes loose during that process. And now we just continue. Remembering to always, before you stop and pivot, make sure your needle is in the down position and to the right of your border piece. Alright you guys, I'm going to go ahead and finish stitching this out, and I'll come back to you as soon as we're done, and we're going to see what this quilt block looks, how it looks when we are done. Okay guys, we are all done with the stitching of this block. You can see the black thread just really blends in and finishes everything off really nicely. It's been a lot of fun to show you this technique. It was just an idea that came to mind. I'm sure I'm not the first person to do this, and I'm not claiming to be. However, it was an idea that came to mind when I was designing the layout for this quilt. It's really a lot of fun. You could incorporate this kind of technique into any type of quilt you're doing. It's not just t-shirt quilts. So if you give it a try, I'd love to see or to hear how it turns out for you. Leave a comment below and let me know how it goes. Also, if you're interested in the next part of this quilt series that I'm doing, subscribe and you'll get notifications the next time I post a video. I have a couple of ideas. I'm not quite sure which I'll come to first, so stay tuned and continue to watch. If you have any questions, leave them below because I will answer them. And if they come before my next video, I might even answer them during the next video. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys give this a try. It's a lot of fun. See you next time.